Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bold and Beautiful. Today, the unsettling subject of whether Dylan is indeed evil, Sydney Bullock's explosive disclosure, and the truth behind Luna's mask and plastic surgery. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers indicate that Sydney Bullock recently addressed some Luna Nozawa mask and plastic surgery fan theories. Bullock also revealed whether Dylan is evil, so let's look at what she said in a new interview with SOD. Although BNBS making it seem like Dylan's headed for the exit door, that's not the case since Sydney Bullock is on contract. In fact, Bullock promised a messy little foursome is coming up soon. Of course, that foursome will include Dylan, Will Spencer, Electra Forrester and RJ Forrester. Bullock admitted she's always learning new details about her character and enjoys seeing all the surprises in her scripts. Some viewers have wondered about Dylan's motives and whether she's as bad as Ivy Forrester thinks she is. However, Bullock suggested it's a case of someone with a good heart making not so great choices. But my interpretation for now is that she's not evil, she just maybe doesn't make all the best decisions, Bullock said before acknowledging that Dylan's been through a lot of difficult situations. It was easy for Dylan to get caught up in her crush on Will since he gave her somewhere safe to land in a tough time. Dylan cares about Electra too, so it's been quite the inner battle for her. Since there have been wild fan theories about Luna being alive and somehow coming back in the form of Dylan, Bullock addressed those and shut down the idea that her character is mentally unstable. As far as I know, I'm not Luna in a mask or Luna with plastic surgery to look like Dylan. I think Dylan, she's genuine. She's not a psychopath, Bullock confirmed. Although Sydney Bullock made it clear that her character isn't Luna 2.0, she admitted Dylan perhaps has a rebellious side. Dylan has the potential to be a bit more of a bad girl than Electra from Bullock's perspective. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers say Dylan's storyline will lead to some shocking news and new sources of conflict, so stay tuned for updates on all the action. The Bold and the Beautiful is rocked to its core when Sydney Bullock, long dismissed as a peripheral observer and underestimated confidant, detonates the most devastating leak Los Angeles has seen in years, ripping the mask, both literal and figurative, off Luna and exposing a labyrinth of plastic surgery, identity manipulation, and psychological warfare that forces everyone to reevaluate Dylan's role in the unfolding chaos. Because what begins as a whispered rumor explodes into a full-blown scandal the moment Sydney releases photographic evidence, medical records, and timeline discrepancies that prove Luna has not only altered her appearance through extensive reconstructive surgery, but has also been hiding behind carefully curated personas designed to infiltrate powerful families, manipulate romantic entanglements, and position herself at the center of multiple corporate and emotional fault lines. And as the story breaks, shockwaves ripple through Forrester Creations, the Logan household, and even the darker corners of Sheila Carter's legacy, because Luna's face, once familiar, now disturbingly unfamiliar, becomes the symbol of a far larger deception that implicates nearly everyone who ever trusted her, especially Dylan, whose proximity to Luna places her squarely in the line of suspicion, forcing the question no one wants to ask out loud. Was Dylan an innocent pawn, a willing accomplice, or the true architect of the entire con? Sydney's leak reveals that Luna underwent at least 3 major surgical procedures over a 5-year span, including facial restructuring that aligns eerily with the disappearance of another young woman whose identity was quietly erased from public records. And as doctors, timelines, and photographic comparisons surface, it becomes impossible to deny that Luna has been living a lie so comprehensive that even her most intimate relationships were built on a foundation of surgical precision and emotional calculation, and when confronted, Luna initially denies everything, insisting the records are fabricated and Sydney is obsessed. But her panic tells a different story, especially when Steffi and Katie independently verify portions of the leak through private investigators, discovering that Luna's past residences, educational history, and even her name do not align, which sends Dylan spiraling as she realizes the woman she defended, loved, and protected may not exist at all. Yet the deeper Sydney digs, the more complicated the truth becomes, because embedded within the evidence is a startling revelation. Dylan herself had been investigated years earlier in connection to the same underground network of identity reconstruction clinics, not as a patient, but as someone who had access, influence, and unexplained financial transactions. Igniting whispers that Dylan may have helped Luna disappear and re-emerge, and suddenly the narrative fractures, as flashbacks recontextualize every heated argument, every conveniently timed absence, every moment Dylan stepped in to deflect suspicion away from Luna, making viewers, and characters, wonder if Dylan's fiery defensiveness was loyalty or guilt. But Sydney doesn't stop there, because she releases audio recordings suggesting Dylan once warned Luna that masks work until someone wants the truth badly enough, a line that now feels less poetic and more like a confession. And yet, just as the public verdict begins to tilt toward Dylan being evil, another layer peels back when Sydney admits she withheld one crucial piece of information until now. Luna was fleeing someone far more dangerous than Dylan, someone who funded the surgeries not for vanity, but for survival, implying that Luna's transformation may have been an act of desperation rather than malice. And when Luna finally breaks down, she confesses that the mask, both the emotional one and the prosthetic disguise she occasionally wore to evade recognition, was never about power but protection, claiming she was being hunted for knowing too much about a criminal enterprise tied to high-level corporate espionage and blackmail. And it's here that Dylan's role becomes painfully ambiguous, because Dylan admits she knew Luna wasn't who she claimed to be but insists she believed Luna was a victim, not a predator, and helped her hide because she thought she was saving a life, not destroying others. But as Sheila Carter's name surfaces in connection to the same underground channels, the story darkens further, because Sheila's influence suggests manipulation on a scale far beyond Luna's control, and Sydney's final revelation, that Dylan once attempted to turn Luna in but backed out after receiving an anonymous threat involving Elektra, casts Dylan not as purely evil but as someone cornered by fear, loyalty, and leverage, forcing everyone to confront the uncomfortable truth that morality in Los Angeles isn't clean-cut. It's negotiated under pressure, and as Luna is taken into custody for questioning, her mask removed in a moment that feels both symbolic and tragic, she locks eyes with Dylan and asks the question that defines the fallout. If you'd let them see me then, would any of this have happened? Leaving Dylan shattered, because the answer isn't clear, and Sydney Bullock, standing at the center of the storm she unleashed, acknowledges that exposing the truth doesn't make her a hero, only a catalyst, because some lies, once revealed, don't bring justice, they bring reckoning, and as alliances fracture, reputations collapse, and the line between villain and victim blurs beyond recognition. The Bold and the Beautiful enters a new era where faces can be changed, identities rewritten, and the most dangerous masks are the ones worn by people who believe they're doing the right thing, leaving one haunting question lingering long after the leak goes public. If Dylan isn't evil, then why does the truth keep destroying everyone she tries to protect? The Bold and the Beautiful detonates into full-blown chaos when Ivy's chilling threat against Dylan sends shockwaves through every corner of Los Angeles, turning whispered tensions into a public war and forcing R.J. Forrester to step into a role he never expected. Because what begins as a private confrontation explodes into a life-altering turning point that reshapes alliances, exposes buried secrets, and proves that Ivy is no longer playing games, as Dylan is blindsided when Ivy corners her with eyes blazing and a voice dripping with menace, making it clear that this time she isn't posturing or bluffing but issuing a final warning that leaves Dylan visibly shaken, because Ivy knows something powerful enough to destroy reputations, families, and futures, and she's no longer willing to stay silent, declaring that Dylan has overstayed her welcome, crossed too many lines, and interfered in matters she doesn't fully understand, while Dylan, struggling to maintain her composure, realizes Ivy's rage isn't just jealousy or territorial instinct but something far deeper, rooted in years of resentment, betrayal, and unresolved pain that has finally reached its boiling point. And as Ivy's words turn sharper and more personal, hinting at secrets involving Elektra, Forrester Creations, and a past incident Dylan thought was long buried, Dylan's fear becomes unmistakable. Because Ivy isn't just threatening social ruin, she's threatening total annihilation, promising that if Dylan doesn't walk away immediately, Ivy will make sure she loses everything she's worked for, including the people she loves most, and the tension becomes unbearable as Ivy leans in close and delivers the line that freezes Dylan in place. That she knows exactly how to make her disappear without leaving a trace, a statement that feels less metaphorical and more terrifyingly real, especially given Ivy's history of calculated moves and quiet power plays, and just when it seems Dylan is completely alone. Spiraling under the weight of Ivy's intimidation, RJ steps in, unexpected, furious, and unwilling to stand by any longer, as he interrupts the confrontation with a commanding presence that immediately shifts the balance of power, because RJ refuses to let Ivy weaponize fear and manipulation, calling her out for crossing a line and making it clear that Dylan isn't as isolated as Ivy believes. And this moment becomes a turning point not only for Dylan but for RJ himself, as he steps out of the shadow of his family legacy and asserts his own moral authority, telling Ivy that threats and intimidation will not be tolerated, especially not under the Forrester name. But Ivy, far from backing down, turns her attention to RJ with a cold smile, warning him that loyalty to Dylan will cost him dearly, because the truth Ivy is sitting on doesn't just implicate Dylan, it threatens to unravel the fragile balance holding multiple families together. And as the confrontation escalates, past grievances spill out, revealing that Ivy's fury stems from a belief that Dylan manipulated her way into positions of trust, influence, and emotional proximity she never deserved, while Dylan fires back that Ivy's obsession with control has turned her into someone unrecognizable, exposing the cracks in Ivy's carefully curated image as the composed, strategic power player. And RJ watches in real time as two women he never imagined would become enemies tear into each other with surgical precision, forcing him to confront the reality that this conflict isn't about one argument or one misunderstanding but about years of unresolved resentment that have finally collided. And as word of the explosive showdown spreads, others are drawn into the orbit of the drama, with Elektra sensing something is terribly wrong, Katie growing suspicious of Ivy's sudden confidence, and Ridge beginning to realize that RJ's involvement could pull the entire Forrester family into dangerous territory. But the real shock comes when Ivy drops a final bombshell, revealing that she has already set events in motion that cannot be undone, implying that documents have been copied, messages scheduled, and alliances quietly secured, meaning Dylan's fate may already be sealed regardless of what happens next, leaving Dylan devastated and desperate as she questions whether staying in Los Angeles is worth the risk, while RJ, refusing to abandon her, vows to stand between Ivy and the destruction she's threatening, even if it costs him his standing, his family's approval, or his future at Forrester Creations. And as Ivy walks away with chilling confidence, leaving behind a shaken Dylan and a fiercely determined RJ, it becomes clear that this is only the beginning of a far more dangerous battle, one where threats will turn into actions, secrets will be exposed without mercy, and RJ's decision to step in will change the trajectory of everyone involved, because in this moment, Ivy has drawn her line in the sand, Dylan has become a target, and RJ has unknowingly volunteered himself as collateral damage in a war that is just getting started, setting the stage for betrayals, power shifts, and consequences that will ripple through the bold and the beautiful for weeks to come.